Hello and a very warm welcome to the News Today initiative of Vision IS. I am Pratik and I'll be covering the News Today section for 7th of October. In the main news, the first news is WHO report on tobacco use 2000 to 2024. So here we'll talk about the recent highlights from the report and we'll look into the trends with respect to the consumption of tobacco. We'll also look into some of the measures that the WHO has introduced that has led to the changing pattern of consumption of tobacco and what measures India has taken in this regard. Second news, Competition Commission of India study on AI's impact on competition in India. Here we'll look into the various impact that AI has made on the various economic aspects, and we'll look into whether it is leading to some of the challenges in the Indian startup and the Indian economic system, and what can be some of the regulatory measures that CCI has suggested in this study. Third news, State of Social Justice report by ILO. So in this particular topic, we'll talk about the progress in some of the social indicators while worldwide, and we'll also talk about some of the challenges which the institution has talked about with respect to social indicators and what can be done to address these aspects. Fourth news is about the progress of e-governance in India. So here we'll look into how e-governance has shaped governance or shaped the relationship of the state with the citizens and how it has progressed over the years. Then in the fifth news, we'll talk about the Nobel Prize in Medicine for the year 2025. So here we'll look into the concept of immunotherapy and partial immunotherapy response and why it is significant for the community at large. Then in the last news, we'll talk about multiple initiatives launched at the Wildlife Week of 2025. And in the places in news, we have Qatar, and then we also have certain quick updates. So the first news is about the WHO report on trends in the prevalence of tobacco use from the year 2000 to 2024. And the crux of this report is that the prevalence of tobacco has declined significantly. In fact, from 2010 to 2024, the decline is approximately 7%. So earlier, the usage was around 26%, but now it has reduced to around 19%. So that's a good news, but it is also, it suggests that the tobacco companies are also starting to devise new technology to addict these adolescents, and they're also trying to market their e-cigarettes very rapidly. So in light of this, what exactly are the problems or what exactly are the initiatives taken by the WHO? We'll take a look into it. And definitely this is basically part of your GS paper 2, social issues, where we study about health. And it is also part of governance because it is initiative of global governance. So if you look at the report, there is decline in global tobacco use, which is reduced from 26% of 2010 to 19.5% or close to 20% in the year 2024. So this is a very interesting and a very important development. And for this development, there are a couple of reasons. So we need to look into what process the WHO has adopted for this outcome to materialize. So if you look at some of the measures taken by WHO, the most important one, which we had discussed a couple of days back, is Empower Initiative. So Empower Initiative essentially is a combination of several initiatives. So M here stands for monitor. Then you have protect. Then you have oversee. Then warn. Then offer help. So O is offer help. Sorry. E is empower. And R is raise tax. So if you look at all the anti-tobacco policies of most of the countries, they would largely fall within this domain in terms of monitoring the use, protecting the individuals from the harm of tobacco, then offering help through various initiatives, then warning labels that would be imposed on the tobacco packets, then empowering the people, and then raising taxes so that the consumption can be reduced. So this is the flagship initiative of WHO. The second one, very interesting, is called 3 by 35 initiative. Okay, 3 by 35 initiative. So here 3 and 35 both are very important. So 3 here refers to, first is with respect to tobacco, then you have alcohol, and then sugary drinks like cold drinks, soft drinks. In these 3 products, the WHO has suggested that the government increase taxes by at least 50% by the year 2035. So this is the initiative called 3 by 35, very important initiative. And the third one, which is Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, this was passed in 2003. So these 3 initiatives can be considered to be the reasons why there is a decline in the usage of tobacco. At the same time, if you look at the number, still 1 in 5 adults worldwide, so it is around 20% adults remains hooked on tobacco, some form of tobacco. And what is the insidious or the worst part? That now the tobacco companies are targeting adolescent population and they're popularizing e-cigarette. So the trend of vaping has become more in fashion these days. So more than 100 people are worldwide are using e-cigarettes. So if you look at India's progress in this regard, so India has also signed the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Use, and India is also following the Empower initiative. Because of that, India has undertaken several measures which essentially discourage the usage of tobacco consumption and production. So here, first one is tobacco use in India. India accounted for approximately 243.48 million tobacco users aged 15 and older. And India is on track to meet WHO NCD need target, which is expected reduction is close to 43%. And if you look at the target of WHO, it is close to 30% reduction. So India is on target. But at the same time, if you look at the absolute number, this is a really big number that we are seeing. So therefore, India has taken several measures as we were talking about. So the first one is with respect to India's step to curb tobacco use. First one is Cigarettes and Other Tobacco Products Act. So this is called COTPA Act, COTPA Act. It was introduced in 2003. And within the actual legislation, there have been several measures. First is it prohibits smoking in the public places. Then there is ban on sale of tobacco products to minors, right? Apart from that, there is also ban of selling or advertisement of tobacco products on the movies and on the TV screens, right? Then the second one is with respect to the amendment of this primary act, which is the Packaging and Labeling Amendment Rules 2022, which provides images for display on package with health warnings. You may have seen this as well. Third, there is National Tobacco Control Program, and purpose of this is preventive in nature. It is to create some sort of awareness and reduce the production and supply of tobacco products. So it is creating hindrance at the level of supply. So these are demand-based initiative or measures, and this is with respect to these production side, the supply side. Then the last one is with respect to Prohibition of Electronic Cigarettes Act 2019. So with respect to e-cigarettes in India, India has straight away banned the consumption and production of e-cigarette or vaping in the country, right? So on one hand, we allow the traditional tobacco products like cigarettes, like BD, like all the other consumable items. Production is not banned, but they are regulated. But with respect to vaping, it is not regulated, but it is completely banned. Now, can you tell me what could be the reason why India has taken this drastic measure with respect to e-cigarettes in the country? What could be some of the reasons? And one of the reasons which I can give you is that India is following what is called as precautionary principle. So precautionary principle means that you may not know the exact effect, right? It could have some positive effect or some not that negative effect. But the best thing is that if you know that it is likely to cause some harm, better avoid it. So maybe because of that reason, India has completely banned the usage and consumption of e-cigarettes. In fact, the e-cigarette or vaping came into controversy recently with the recent TV show called The Bats of Bollywood. So in that particular TV show, it was in one of the scene, the actor Ranbir Kapoor was shown vaping, right? So that became cause of controversy as well. Okay. So with respect to tobacco, if you want to know about some of the properties, because it can be a potential question as part of agriculture or in the prelims. So here the origin is South America, and the climatic conditions which are required are, it is grown under a wide range of climate but requires a frost period of 90 to 120 days, which means that it cannot be grown in very cold temperature or cold environment. Second, temperature is required in this area, in this range, 20 degree to 30 degrees Celsius for ideal growth. Then rainfall requirement, minimum requirement is close to 50 centimeter or 500 millimeter. And what kind of soil it requires? Well-drained sandy loam or alluvial soil with good fertility. In India's case, it is the second largest producer after China, as well as second largest exporter as well after Brazil. In terms of the states with respect to the trend in production, Gujarat leads the production with 30%. Then it is followed by Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, UP, and Bihar. So this is all about the first news. Now let's move to the second news of the day, which is market study on artificial intelligence and competition. This is a study conducted by Competition Commission of India. And as you know, Competition Commission of India is a regulatory body or a statutory body. So it can be covered in GS paper 2, where we study about the regulatory body, quasi-judicial body, and statutory body, along with the fact that it has a significant role to play as a regulator in economic affairs. So it can also be covered within GS paper 3. If you look about or talk about CCI, it is a statutory body, and it is a statutory body. So the act under which it has been formulated is Competition Act of 2002, right? And it came into force in 2003, but actually it started working in 2009. If you look at the composition, it has one chairperson along with 4 other members. And what is exactly is the mandate of Competition Commission of India? The mandate of Competition Commission of India is to ensure that there is a level playing field. Those players which are very much or very significantly high with respect to market cap or very large players, they should not use their position to dominate the market system, right? So first objective of Competition Commission of India is to ensure a level playing field in economy. Second is it also looks into the mergers and acquisition of various companies, because if some major companies acquire or they merge together, then it can definitely leads to creation of monopolies. So to prevent monopolies from being created, it also looks into the mergers and acquisition trends. And thirdly, and most importantly, it is to protect the consumers. So consumers on one hand, and also the interest of the small and marginal economic players as well, so that they can also effectively compete in the whole economic scenario. But with the advent and the rapid adoption of artificial intelligence, now we can see that there is going to be a change in the whole economic level playing field. So on one hand, there are several benefits of AI. You can see that AI is something that has, in a way, ensured level playing field, because even the smaller companies are able to use data. They're able to use some sort of algorithm to also pitch or also go for to initiate products that or some sort of projects which can compete against the rival big players as well. So it has in a way provided for a level playing field. It has also reduced the entry level as well. So our entry barrier has also been reduced, which means that a lot of companies can now compete in the economic arena. And thirdly, artificial intelligence has also created a lot of choices for the consumer because they can get their products or their services from across a host of players. So in a way, AI has provided for some benefits. But at the same time, with respect to the study conducted by CCI, it has flagged several concerns as well. So now let's take a look at some of these concerns as well. Okay, so with respect to before the concerns, let's take about the study. So what exactly the study is all about? The study is about AI's impact on India's market dynamics, competition and regulatory framework. With respect to global market, AI is going to rise 25-fold. AI market is projected to rise 25-fold from the present $189 billion to $4.8 trillion. And with respect to India, the AI market is going to expand 25 to 35% annually, which is a huge number, to reach $17 to $22 million or billion dollar by 2027. So this is some of the data that you can understand to get a context of how this whole AI is going to shape the quantifiable part of the AI market. Now let's talk about the impact of AI. First is with respect to algorithmic biases or algorithmic abuse of dominance. So we all know that AI works on the basis of data, and big companies have access to a large volume of data. So in that sense, they have a better presence of data for self-preferencing or predatory pricing, right? It can help in control, reinforce, and monopoly. So essentially what this point says is since the bigger companies have access to data in a very large volume, it creates better opportunity for them to go for predatory pricing, which means that they can price their product so cheap that would outcompete the smaller rival. In a way, what it will do is it will be against the smaller players. Why? Because they will not be able to offer the kind of discount or the kind of prices that the larger companies would be able to get because of the fact that they have been using AI for a very long time, and because of the fact that the data that they have is more sophisticated in nature. Secondly, there is AI driven price discrimination, and this is because of the pricing tailors. The rates are tailored to the consumer's willingness to pay. Now, you may have seen that some apps like Blinkit or Zomato charges different prices depending on the smartphones that you are using. For the iPhone users, the charges could be substantially high, and for the Android user, the charges could be low. Now, this essentially is done by algorithms. It is driven by AI, and because of that, it leads to price discrimination. It risks the exploitation of vulnerable user as well. So essentially what it does is it does something like it will charge lower from a consumer who is likely to order again and again. So in a way, it will not check whether its bias is going to have some sort of problem with the vulnerable section, right? Thirdly, there is again a second, a more insidious form of this is the algorithmic collusion, where the self-learning AIs may coordinate prices or bids without explicit human agreement. So, for example, there are prices for airline tickets, right? So, generally, all the airline have certain kind of low or certain bottom prices below which they will not go. But imagine a scenario where the AIs are coordinating together, and then they can jack up the prices so that the bottom threshold can be increased substantially. So in a way, they can work as a cartel, right? So this can also lead to cartelization of products, right? And this ends also can make the collusion very difficult to detect because there is no human collaboration or no human agreement is there. So these are some of the challenges that the Competition Commission of India has identified with respect to usage of AI in the competition sector. Now, what measures it has provided to overcome this? First, it has suggested that the regulatory body should be enhanced with respect to capacity or capacity building of the regulatory organization in terms of the technical capabilities and with respect to the infrastructure. And more importantly, there has to be a need for a think tank and expert that can provide some information on digital markets and AI. They can analyze it and provide suggestions. Secondly, inter-regulatory coordination. So here the CCI has suggested that we should promote coordination with other government department and regulators, partially or potentially through the memoranda of understanding. And within this also, we can also suggest another way of having some sort of intermediary regulation as well. For example, self-regulatory or mechanisms can be devised. Then international cooperation can be done with respect to the authorities and multilateral platforms like the OECD to align on the enforcement strategies, because most of the countries are also facing the similar kind of challenges. So OECD has come up with certain guidelines to coordinate with the antitrust measures. So maybe we can also implement those measures as well. If you look at the previous year question, UPSC has asked a very generic question on this topic with respect to the role played by the Competition Commission of India in containing the abuse of dominant position by the multinational companies in India. Refer to the recent decision. So this was a question that came in 2023 GS paper 2. So we have already discussed some of the role as well. But with respect to the recent decision, you can talk about the Google case or the recent case where the CCI talked about or talked to Meta with respect to the privacy and using the dominant position in the messaging services with respect to WhatsApp. So all the recent cases can also be provided here as well. Next topic, the state of social justice, a work in progress report released by International Labour Organization. And this topic is part of GS paper 2, social issues. So here, again, it's a very good report in terms of the fact that it talks about that world has now become wealthier, the world has become more educated, and it has become more socially protected, right? So it has highlighted certain pros with respect to the performance of social justice in the world at large, but it has also flagged two major challenges. So what are the challenges that it has flagged? So the first challenge is that there is inequality which is growing up. And second, it has flagged the problem that there is growing distrust in the state and the other organization. So these are the two problems or the challenges that ILO has highlighted. But at the same time, it has also mentioned that the social justice project is going in a very progressive direction. Now, the context here is also very important. The context is that it is the 30th anniversary since the 1995 Copenhagen Summit on Social Development was done. So it is considered as a landmark initiative with respect to understanding what is social justice, what are the pillars of social justice, etc., and harmonizing the global action on taking social justice measures. Now, in November 2025, around a month from now, there's going to be another meeting or a global summit on social development, and this is now going to be held in Doha. So before this summit happens, ILO has provided this report so that the stakeholders will have a credible amount of data and analysis to further make their decision. Now, with respect to progress, we have already discussed that now the extreme poverty has down from 39% to 10%, and more than 50% of the world population is now covered by some sort of social protection like insurance, like some sort of pension, etc. Apart from that, it has also highlighted the fact that child labor has also declined significantly. There is some slightly or marginal increase in the labor force participation rate of women as well. So there are certain positive with respect to this. Secondly, if you look at the deficits, there is inequality reduction is stalled or reduced. 71% of the income outcomes linked to the birth circumstances. So depending on where you take birth, in which country or in which family, it is your poverty status is very much linked to that fact. Then there is falling trust in the institution since 1982. Now, why this is important? Because you may have been seeing a lot of trend where a lot of people are revolting against their government. And the reason why people revolt primarily stem from the fact that there is growing inequality. And because of that, there is a feeling that government is not doing enough for the people, and it is indulging in self indulgement, and it is involved in corruption. And because of that, there is very much increase in the trust or decrease in the trust in the institutions. So it can lead to several protests. You may have seen the Nepal Gen Z protest, or the recent protest in several Latin American countries, or in Africa, or maybe in West Asia. So there is a huge trend that is going on, and the whole trend can be partially explained through these parameters. Then risk, with respect to the risk, there are a couple of risks, including environmental risk, digital risk, and demographic shift. So environmental risk primarily comes from the fact that there is going to be increase in the climate change event. And because of that, there is going to be problem with respect to or it can exacerbate or worsen the inequality factor. Then there is digital shifts which is ongoing, and because of that, there is growing adoption of e-technology or e-governance and artificial intelligence. But at the same time, the digital divide is also increasing. Then there is demographic shift, where on the one hand, we are seeing that in certain pockets of the world, there is demographic change in the favor of the senior citizen, right? And then on the other hand, there are several other pockets, especially in the developing countries, where there is more younger population compared to the senior citizen. So this also will have some severe impact with respect to inequality, with respect to labor force, etc. Now, the report has also explained what it means by social justice, and interestingly, it has provided a very comprehensive explanation of the term social justice. So what it says is that the goal that every individual has right to pursue material prosperity and spiritual growth. So it combines both material progress along with spiritual growth in an environment that is of freedom, respect, in economic stability, and equal chances. Now it talks about 4 key pillars of social justice. The first pillar is fundamental human rights and capabilities. Second, equal access to opportunity. It does not talk about access or equal outcome, but it talks about equal opportunities. Third, fair distribution and fair transitions. So transition from one system to the other should be fair in nature. Okay, so this is all about social justice. So in light of these transition, economic or the environmental transition, digital transition, and demographic transition, there are certain risks that we need to take into account, and therefore it is important that the policies can be reformed in that way. So what are the suggestions that ILO is providing? First, reapply and adapt the labor institution. In what way? The core framework of social protection and labor protection should be increased. Second, there should be some social dialogue between the workers on one hand and the management on the other hand. But at the same time, there should be social, or the citizen group should also be participant in the dialogue process. Then the social dimension should be amplified, where the labor policies should be integrated with finance, industry, health, and environmental planning. So whenever we make any planning, for example, with respect to finance, it should not be made without considering its impact on the labor, right? Because if something is labor displacing, it was definitely going to have some negative impact on the labor force. So we need to take into account how certain policies are going to be impacting the labor force, and how do we communicate those effects to the stakeholders involved. And we need to move beyond the narrow framework to embed the social consideration as well. And the other important thing is that we need to break silos and leverage global cooperation. So now the world is globalized, even though there are several issues of deglobalization as well. But at the level of international civil society, this is we have several platforms where issues which are common to various countries can be discussed and measures can be leveraged. And for that purpose, collaboration is important, not just between the country at large, but also with respect to civil society across different countries and NGOs and academia. Then instruments like the Global Coalition for Social Justice and the Second World Summit for Social Development, which is going to be held recently in the state or in Doha, to strengthen coordinated and holistic responses. So these are some of the prescriptions given by ILO to ensure or to improve the entire social justice infrastructure, and some of this can be written as part of the suggestions as well. Then with respect to previous year question, the question from this topic was with respect to inequality. So what they asked was, inequality in the ownership pattern of resources is one of the major causes of poverty. So inequality and poverty was interlinked, discussed in the context of paradox of poverty. So my question to you is, what do you understand by the term paradox of poverty, and how does it manifest with respect to inequality, right? Next topic is e-governance in India. And this is something that we can directly see that it is part of GS paper 2 syllabus. And here there are a couple of things which are mentioned as part of the syllabus. First is the application. Second, the models of e-governance, successes, some of the ways in which e-governance have been successful. Then some of the limitations or the challenges of e-governance. And finally, the potential, what can it be done in the future, right? So why this was in news? It was in news because of the way e-governance is changing the whole relationship between citizen on one hand and the state on the other hand. So it is considered that e-governance is not merely a technological innovation, but it is a very transformative way in which the citizen and states are interacting currently, right? So first, let's talk about what is e-governance. E-governance is the use of information and communication technology to enhance public services, improve government operations, and promote citizen participation. So e-governance is a complete transformation of the citizen-state relationship by providing the citizen a voice in the decision making and by providing services in a seamless manner. Okay, so that is what is e-governance. Now, if you look at the historical context in India, so it can be divided into 4 phases. Okay, so the first phase can be considered to be from 1980 to 2000. The second phase can be from 2005 to 2020 or 2014. Third phase can be from 2015 to 2020 or 19. And the current phase is 2020 onwards. So this can be the broad phase of how e-governance has originated in and progressed in India. So in the initial stage, from 1980 to 2000, technology was using, or e-governance or internet e-governance was basically using a supporting role, or it was a supporting tool. So here, the services that the government would provide to the people was discussed or was envisaged to be provided through technology. And for this, a very important development was creation of NIC in 1976, or the National Informatics Center. It laid the foundation of India's digitization journey. Okay, so this was the first pillar of development. In fact, from 1991, the development started rapidly, especially because of the 1991 reforms and because of the pace that it started to take place. But most of the initiatives here was at the level of government to government, right? So it was majorly related to the government to government projects, but at the same time, it has some citizen involvement as well. For example, in this phase, the modernization of ticketing system started. So IRCTC was developed. So now no longer one has to pay the agent some money to get or book your ticket. So using IRCTC, citizens can directly book their own tickets. Then there was also income tax or IT, or income tax would also be filed online as well. So there were certain initiatives that were taken which were benefiting the citizen, but largely it was a government to government initiative. Okay. With respect to 2005, the second phase was dominated by states or state governments. So 2000 or 2014, you can say it was dominated by state governments where they had seen several IT revolutions. So several states like Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, and even Madhya Pradesh and UP had started with several e-governance initiatives. And in this phase, the major emphasis was on government to citizen engagement, right? So this was largely government to citizen. So in states like Karnataka, they started with the project of Bhumi project. Okay, Bhumi project, which was essentially about digitization of land record. Then we had there was a project called Friends in Kerala, which was for digitization of certain service. And then in UP also you had Lokvani. So several initiatives were undertaken by state government, and this was essentially promoted because of a very important development called National E-Governance Plan of 2006. Now, through the National E-Governance Plan, government started to create public infrastructure, public digital infrastructure, and it created several data infrastructure, and with respect to the wireless area networks. So basically, it led to the creation of wireless area networks, and it led to creation of data centers and several CSC or common service centers. So these initiatives helped in popularizing the service system for the people. And in 2010 was again a very landmark event because it led to the adoption of Aadhaar, right? So Aadhaar was again a very important development with respect to this, because now government could digitally identify citizens or the persons who are or residents of the country, right? So it was a unique identifier through which government can now identify the residents of the country, and then it can provide for certain projects or certain beneficiary directly. So in this phase, in the first phase was where the internet or e-governance played a supporting role. Here we can say that it played a very active role. Now in 2014 or 15, Digital India program was launched, and after Digital India program, the way in which internet or e-governance was used was completely transformed. How? Because now internet or e-governance was to be used as a form of ecosystem, right? So in a way, this was ecosystem based development. In a way, what happened was now that several of the applications were interlinked. For example, the most crucial impact of this is Jam Trinity. So here you had your Jam or your Jandhan Aadhaar, your Jandhar card account, your Aadhaar for identification, and mobile for sending money, right? So because of that, there is an integrated approach for financial inclusion and integrated approach for providing services. So that was a landmark way in which services were provided to the people. At the same time, this phase was plagued by several issues of data protection, privacy, etc. So these were the issues. In fact, within this period only, there was a very similar judgment called K.S. Puttaswamy case, which held that right to privacy is also a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution. So this third phase was about this. The fourth phase, which is currently ongoing, is the present phase. And in this phase, we can say that it is an amplification of e-governance services, especially of the fact that it is leading to third-party innovations. So we have now India Stack, which means that on top of several infrastructure, public infrastructure, companies can build their own operating devices or their own apps depending on their own importance. So we have India Stack, and now several other initiatives are undergoing, so which has transformed the relationship of government and citizens, right? Now, but at the same time, it is coming at the cost of several data security threat, data security issues, privacy issues, etc. Apart from that, in all these areas, there are a couple of common challenges. The first challenge is your digital divide, which continues even now. Then there is problem with respect to the fact that there is a connectivity issue, right, with respect to or infrastructure issues. Then there is issue of privacy and etc., which have now amplified, right? So this is how the e-governance has progressed in India. And if you look at India's position in the e-government development index, India currently ranks 97 and is poised to become better. Now, if we want to talk about the potential or the success story or the role played by e-governance in India, we can categorize it within several sectors. So with respect to citizen access, we have platforms like eSeva and DigiLocker. They enable anytime access to service. Now with DigiLocker, you can put your important documents like passport, your Aadhaar, and your 12th mark sheet, and then or driver's license, and then it will be considered as equivalent to an original document, right? It is also very transparent. So Bhumi and DBT, which is direct benefit transfer, it curbs corruption and leakage. Initially, when it's a very famous statement by an earlier prime minister who said that if government sends 100 paise to the citizens, only 15 paise reaches to the beneficiary. But with the help of direct benefit transfer, now all the money can be sent to the bank account of the beneficiary. So this is one of the benefits of e-governance. Efficiency, you have it has NEGP and CSC, which is Common Service Centers. They automate processes, they have improved delivery speed, it can be instantaneous. Then financial inclusion is done through JAM Trinity and UPI integration. Rural empowerment, you have Gyandeep and PMG Disha, enhanced digital literacy and participation. Then it is also leading to innovation. So not just with respect to some of the social justice aim, but it is also leading to innovation and interoperability through India Stack and government e-marketplace, promote innovation and seamless cross-sector service delivery. Challenges we have already discussed. There is first is with respect to digital divide. So digital divide basically means that some section have access to internet and the hardware such as mobile phones, computer, laptop, etc. But on the other hand, there are people who do not have access to hardware. And there is also a problem with respect to the learning abilities. So a lot of people do not know how to use mobile phones, or they do not even know what is exactly, they are not digitally literate. Then there is problem of data privacy and surveillance risk. Exclusion errors. There are several reports which have suggested that Aadhaar has not been 100% effective in identifying all the beneficiaries. So there is a lot of exclusion errors as well, which needs to be plugged. Then there is limited institutional capacity, and over platformization is also there, right? So these are some of the challenges. If you look at the previous year question, UPSC often asks question from e-governance. It is one of the most important topics as far as governance is considered. So in this 2025, they had asked a question on e-governance projects have a built-in bias towards technology and back-end integration than user-centric design. So you have to talk about the design, what can be done here, and what are the issues with respect to the design part. Then the second part is about e-governance is not just about the routine application of digital technology in service delivery process. It is about the multifarious interaction for ensuring transparency and accountability. In this context, evaluate the role of interactive service model of e-governance. Now, this statement can be used as an introduction, or if you want to know, or if you want to take up the definition of e-governance, this could be an excellent way to define e-governance, right? So it is about the multifarious interaction for ensuring transparency and accountability. So here the second part is about the role of interactive service model of e-governance. So remember that model of e-governance is part of your syllabus. So with respect to models of e-governance, it can be discussed in two ways. One is that you talk about the interaction of various stakeholders. So within this, it can be government to government, government to citizen, government to business, right? Or government to employees. Then you can have certain examples of that. Then there is another way with respect to functions. There can be different ways in which you can classify the models of e-governance. One, of course, is the broadcast model. Broadcast model is top to down communication. Think, for an example, Man Ki Baat. So in this perspective, the government provides information of several services and does not take into account your feedback. Then there is critical flow model. Critical flow model essentially talks about providing services to certain section of people who have or who require information in that regard, right? So it can be with respect to some important information or services, or it can be with respect to the some beneficiary account that it is in concern with that. Then the third one would be your e-advocacy. So e-advocacy is essentially where you use online petition or some other ways to preserve, to promote and protect the group interest of your group. So it is e-advocacy. And the last one could be considered as the interactive service model, which is what UPSC has asked. Now, interactive service model is completely different from the broadcast model. So it is not just a top-down approach, but it provides for some sort of communication from top to down and down to top as well. So it's a bottom-up approach as well. So here, the citizens provide communication feedback as well. For example, you have MyGov portal, or you can give example in the form of CP grams, where citizen provides their grievances against the central or the state government officials. So here, this services that is provided is given feedback, and depending on the feedback and depending on the analysis, sometimes the services can also be changed accordingly, right? So this is all about e-governance, very important topic. Next, Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. And this, of course, is part of General Studies, Paper 3, Science and Technology. Now here, what is important is not the names of the recipients, but for what they have received the Nobel Prize. But still, we should know their names as well. So in this, you have two American scientists, Mary E. Brunko and Fred Ramsdell. They are US scientists. And then we have a Japanese scientist, Shimon Sakaguchi, right? Now, why they have got the Nobel Prize? They have been awarded Nobel Prize in Biology for discovery on peripheral immune tolerance. Okay. So let's discuss the concept of immune system. So immune system essentially works on the basis of the fact that if a foreign substance enters the body, the immune system kicks in and it attacks the foreign substance like virus, bacteria, or any other pathogens. So that is the general way in which the immune system works. But earlier it was not clear why the immune system would only attack the pathogens and not attack the host cells. And because of that reason, and it was not, they were not, the people were not able to identify the reason for autoimmune disorder or with respect to a transplantation of organs or even for cancer, right? So because this reason was not clear how the immune system works, Therefore, there were several issues with respect, or several challenges with respect to the medical sciences, or the disease were they were without any way of treatment. So now what happened was, it was initially started by Shimon Sakaguchi, who talked about the formation or the concept of peripheral immune tolerance. So he says that in the immune system, we have WBCs, or white blood cells, and in the white blood cells we have T cells. T cells are the one which are basically, they are acting against, or acting like, or acting for the immune system. And within T cells, there is a specific T cell called regulatory T cell. He also called it as Treg, regulatory T cell. So this presence of regulatory T cell is what differentiate, or it regulates the attack on various pathogens. So it allows the attack on the pathogens. So Treg regulates, so on pathogens it allows attack, but host cell, it prevents attack, right? So if in any organism there is presence of Treg, or regulatory T cells, it will ensure that the immune system is attacking against the pathogens only, and not attacking the host cells. To show this part, what he did was, he isolated the T cells from a mice, and then the mice started showing the symptom of autoimmune disorder. And then when he placed it back to the mice, then he started recovering, indicating that the conceptual part works. But this whole part was not sufficient to provide or give enough process. So for that, the field work or the implementation part was done by the two scientists from America, Brukov and Ramsdell. They advanced the study by studying scurfy mice who developed severe autoimmune disease. And in 2001, they identified a particular gene, FOXP3, as responsible for autoimmunity in these vines. So long story short, what is happening is that in any immune system, if it needs to work well, there has to be T cells, and that T cell should be the regulatory T cells. And these T cells were based off this gene, right? So T cells, and within that regulatory T cells were required, and the T cells they contained the gene of FOXP3. So that is the gene that they named. And then these two studies were combined, and it was done in the 90s only, and 2000s, but they have now been recognized as an award for Nobel Prize. Okay. Now, what is the significance? Significance of this is with respect to several diseases, including cancer. So tumors can recruit the T cells to evade the immunity. So what happens in cancer? When cancer, there is a multiplication of cells, and these cells, they do not get attacked by the T cells, right? Thus, immunotherapies aim to inhibit the T cell activity, right? So in cancer therapies, or you may have heard about CAR T therapy. So here, the T cell activity is inhibited so that the cancer cells can be properly attacked, okay, and to improve treatment effectiveness. Secondly, in autoimmune disorder and transplant care, the trials aim to enhance the Treg formation. So here in this case, in these two cases, the treatment is to enhance the Treg, or the regulatory T cell formation, so that they can control the attack happening at the host cell, right? So in cancer, you can see that there is inhibition of Treg, but in these two there is enhancement of Treg, right? So I hope this part is clear to all of you. So the UPSC has of course not asked any question, but let's take a look at this practice question. I hope this is visible to all of you. The FOXP3 gene, which was part of the Nobel winning discovery of 2025, is primarily associated with, tell me in the comment section which one is correct. Now, if you look at the PYQs, UPSC had asked a question on Nobel Prize in 2021, but surprisingly or shockingly, it was not with respect to the Nobel Prize of 2020 or 2019, but it went as far as the Nobel Prize in 2014, right? So the point that I'm trying to make is that do not do PhD in any particular technology. Just understand what exactly they are supposed to do, what is their day-to-day or everyday application, and understand their significance. If you can understand some of the basic scientific principle behind it, that would be good. And try to get at least 4 or 5 years back Nobel Prizes, right? Because this can be a potential area of question in UPSC mains, and also in prelims also they can ask you questions which are associated with the technology or the science part in the prelims exam. Next, let's go to the sixth news, where the Union Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has launched multiple initiatives at the Wildlife Week 2025. And the Wildlife Week basically starts from October 2 and it ends at October 8. And it first started in 1952. The idea was to spread awareness towards wildlife conservation, environment, and to encourage participation of people in the conservation of nature. So every year, the government celebrates Wildlife Week from October 2nd to October 8th. And in this particular year, the government has launched 5 projects. So what are these projects? First is Project Dolphin Phase 2. And this is implementation of the action plan to strengthen conservation measures for both marine and the riverine fishes or the dolphins across India. So India is, now this is the static part, this is the dynamic part or the news, and here it is linked to the static part. So this is how UPSC asks questions. So it will never directly limit itself to the current affairs part. It will also ask you about with respect to what is the status of protection of the species in news, where it is found, and some other trivia related to it. So with respect to dolphins, India is home to freshwater dolphins such as Ganges, such as the the dolphins in Ganges and in Indus water dolphins. So we have freshwater as well as marine dolphins. Then the protection status is endangered, IUCN, and they are kept under the Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. With respect to the second news, we have second project, it is Project Sloth Bear. And here there is launch of National Implementation Framework for the conservation of sloth bear. They are mainly found in India, Nepal and Sri Lanka. Their protection status is vulnerable and they are put under the Schedule 1 of WPA 1972. They primarily eat termites and ants, and one important fact with respect to them is that unlike other bear species, they carry their cubs on their back. So UPSC several times asked some question on animal behavior as well. So some details like this you should be aware of. Third, Project Ghadial. So in this, Ghadials are majorly found in Nepal and India. They are critically endangered species and part of Schedule 1. And the males develop a bulbous growth at the tip of their snout, which is called as ghada. It has several functions. So this is like this, ghada. Right? So this is why they're called as ghadial. It has several functions, including acting as a vocal resonator. Then tigers outside tiger reserves to address conflicts, including tigers outside protected areas. They are found majorly in India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan. Protection status is endangered, IUCN. and their individually unique stripes make them each tiger identifiable. Then we had Center for Excellence for Human Wildlife Conflict Management. This under this establishment of a dedicated national center at SACON to support policy research and field-based mitigation of human wildlife conflict. So this is all about the sixth news. Now let's talk about the places in news where Qatar is in news. Why? Because India has expanded its UPI infrastructure services to Qatar. And now why this is important is that India's position or India's policy in Middle East or West Asia is can be considered to be a combination of geopolitics and geoeconomics. But lately, India has prioritized its geoeconomics over geopolitics. Why? Because the Middle East region is in turmoil because of the recent Israel-Hamas war, and also because of the fact that US is going outside from the region in a way, or US is exiting in a way from that region, and that position is now being occupied by China. So India wants to locate itself or entrench itself significantly with respect to the economic policies. So that is why this news becomes quite important. So with respect to the location part, Qatar is located in West Asia, and the bordering country here is Saudi Arabia, right? So this is the only country with which it is sharing border with. And with respect to bodies, it has Persian Gulf on one side and Gulf of Bahrain on the other side. In terms of geographical feature, it has sand dunes and sand flats from the chief topographical features. It possesses the world's third largest natural gas reserves and is one of the world's largest exporters of natural gas. Very important fact. Now let's discuss quick updates very quickly. The first news is with respect to securities transaction tax. So recently, Supreme Court has agreed to examine the constitutional validity of security transaction tax. So recently what happened was there was a petitioner who said that security transaction tax essentially amounts to double taxation, because not only someone is paying taxes with respect to the capital gains, but again, they have to pay tax with respect to the security transaction again. So it amounts to double taxation, right? Then there were other reasons as well why the petitioner has challenged the constitutional validity of security transaction tax and has called it to be arbitrary. Now, if you look at security transaction tax, it is a direct tax levied on the transaction of securities conducted through a recognized stock exchange in India, and it was introduced in India through the Finance Act of 2004. And the aim of this act was to curb tax evasion in the security market. So in the security market earlier, especially in the era of 2000, there were a lot of money that was being made, but they were not giving any taxes to the government, right? So government wanted to get as much revenue as possible, and because of that, it started implementing taxation in the securities market as well through the Finance Act of 2004. But now there is a huge controversy with respect to whether this taxation should be there or not. Next, Kharkiv and Poltava regions. Again, you just need to know that these are regions in Ukraine. They are gas sites. Why they were in news? Because Russia has launched massive strikes here. And other regions are also important, such as Donetsk, Luhansk, Sumy, Kharkov, Kherson. All these areas are also important. So you have to take a look into the map and locate their position, because UPSC frequently asks places in news. Next is about blizzard. And recently a sudden blizzard trapped many trekkers and climbers in the remote campsites in Tibet. So if you look, October is generally the best time for trekking in the Mount Everest, precisely because of the reason, because now it is outside, like the monsoon has already gone, so the skies are clearer, and it is basically the time where most of the trekkers across the world come and start their training, and they start going upwards in the Mount Everest, which is of the height 8849 meter, right? Now, the problem here is that recently more than 1,000 trekkers were trapped because of blizzard, okay? So what are blizzard? They are winter storm, dangerous winter storm that are a combination of blowing snow and a wind resulting in very low visibilities. Development, they often develop on the northwest side of an intense storm system, and the difference between the lower pressure in the storm and the higher pressure to the west creates a tight pressure gradient which results in very strong. So this explains why a strong wind system develops, because of the difference in the creation of pressure system in the west and the east side. The impact is they can cause car accidents due to low visibility, frostbite, hypothermia, etc. Next news, UNESCO. So here UNESCO has nominated a first Arab leader or Arab political leader as Director General. Now this news comes from the in the context of the fact that US has recently withdrawn from UNESCO. Okay, so UNESCO can be considered as, or it is a specialized agency of United Nations, and interestingly, if you look at the motto of UNESCO, it says that it have been formulated to ensure security of the countries, right? And it says that since it is in the mind of men and women, war starts, it is essential that we change the mindset of men and women through various initiatives. And this is why UNESCO, and one of the important pillars of changing mind is through education, through social engagement, through cultural orientation. That is why UNESCO becomes quite important. And UPSC has asked several questions from mains from UNESCO, including one very difficult question on McBride Commission. So if you know what I like, try to check and find out what exactly was McBride Commission all about. And this was one of the questions which no students were able to figure out when it came in the examination. Now, the member states are 194. Now tell me, there are 3 member states of UN which are not party to UNESCO, right? So I'll give you 2 names. So Israel and US are the UN states which are not part of or not members of UNESCO, apart from one more country. Now you tell me which other country am I talking about? And then it has 3 more countries which are not part of UN, but they are still part of UNESCO. One of them is Palestine. Then what is the objective? Specialized agency dedicated to strengthening shared humanities through promotion of education, science, culture, and communication. Very important. Governance structure is that they have a general conference, secretariat, and executive board to execute all the important decisions. Appointment is not the DG, the Director General, is nominated by the executive board and appointed by general conference, and the appointment is for 4 years and may be reappointed for another 4 years. There are certain key publications of UNESCO as well that you can take a look into. Next, Al-Hol. So why this was in news? Recently, the high-level international conference on repatriation of persons from Al-Hol was organized by the government of Iraq with the technical support of UN Office of Counter-Terrorism. Long story short, we need to know what is Al-Hol. So Al-Hol is a refugee camp located in northeast Syria. And why it is important? Because you may have heard about Islamic State, ISIL, Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, right? So they had a huge run, so they were successful very much, but later on, because of several other reasons, they could not succeed, and they have now started to fragment. And most of the refugees or the members of the so-called ISIS have been repatriated to Iraq, but a lot of them, alleged members or the actual members, are still being faced, or they're still located at this site, Al-Hol site, right? So it houses Syrians, Iraqi refugees, and individuals of different nationalities from the third countries. Next, Typhoon Matmo. So China's Yunnan and the Guangdong province has recently been affected by Typhoon Matmo. So here we just need to understand what exactly is typhoon, how it is caused, what are the conditions that are conducive for a typhoon. So typhoon is nothing but a tropical cyclone, right, which occurs in the Western Pacific Ocean. It is named differently by different region. For example, in the Indian Ocean region, it is known as cyclones. In the Atlantic region, it is known as hurricanes. And in the Australian region, it is known as willy-willies. And what are they? They are rapidly rotating storms that are non-frontal low pressure system originating over tropical oceans. And they have certain favorable conditions which requires sea surface temperature with temperature slightly higher than 27 degrees Celsius, presence of Coriolis force, small variation in vertical wind speed, and a pre-existing weak low pressure area. These conditions are very well explained in the NCERTs. So now we'll move to the next topic, which is World Para Athletics. Now here this is important because India has won a record 22 medals, including 6 gold medals, making its best ever performance at World Para Athletics Championship 2025. This was held in New Delhi. So India is the 4th Asian nation which has hosted the World Para Athletics Championship for the first time in 2025. Now, it is important that we take care or take note of some sports development as well, which are of national importance, right? So sometimes UPSC can also ask questions based on sports as well. So what is World Para Athletics? The first para athletics competition was held in 1952, and it is governed by International Paralympic Committee, IPC. That is what we require from this. Next is carbon capture and storage, CCS. So according to a study by Climate Analytics, the Asian push for carbon capture storage could add 25 billion tons of emission by 2050, which is a good sign. So what is the concept of carbon capture and storage? And this was the topic which was asked recently in UPSC mains. It refers to technologies that capture the carbon dioxide from the environment. It will capture, or maybe from the emissions of the industry, it will capture the carbon dioxide with the aim of storing it safely underground, which is called as sequestration for permanent isolation. So one of the approach of reducing the carbon emission is that you use fuels which are less carbon emitting. The other approach is that you use normal fuels, but when the emission happen, you control or you capture the carbon emissions and then you store that emission in some underground area. So that basic principle is called as CCUS, or carbon capture and storage, CCS. It has significant potential for reducing carbon dioxide emissions, reducing global warming as well, right? So this is all about news today for the 7th of October. And please solve the questions as well and mention in the comment section. Thank you and all the best.